Have you ever wondered why the USA decided to drop nuclear bombs on Japan? It's a question that echoes down the corridors of history, a pivotal moment that forever changed the course of humanity. Today we delve into this complex narrative, venturing into a time of world conflict, examining the decisions made, the actions taken, and the repercussions that still resonate today. So fasten your seatbelts, history enthusiasts, for an enlightening journey. Join us as we unravel the complex factors leading up to this historical event. To understand this decision, we must first take you back to the heart of the Second World War, a time of global conflict, when nations were locked in a deadly struggle for power, ideology, and survival. The world was a chessboard, and the pieces were nations, each with their own ambitions and fears. At the center of this conflict were two major players, the United States and Japan. The United States, a nation of vast resources and ambition, was a late entrant to the war. Yet its industrial might and technological prowess quickly turned the tide of war in favor of the Allies. Japan, on the other hand, was an island nation with a long history of martial tradition. Despite its limited resources, it had managed to carve out an empire in the Pacific, fueled by a powerful military and a fiercely nationalistic ideology. The two nations were at odds, not just in terms of geography and resources, but also in terms of ideology and ambition. The United States, with its democratic principles and capitalist economy, was diametrically opposed to Japan's militaristic and imperialistic ambitions. The relationship between these two nations was fraught with tension. Each viewed the other with suspicion and fear. The Pacific Ocean, which separated them, was not just a physical barrier but a symbolic one, representing the vast differences between their cultures, ideologies, and ambitions. With tensions escalating, the world was on the brink of a devastating change. In the midst of this global conflict, the USA made a decision that would forever change the course of history. The year was 1945, and the world was embroiled in the Second World War. The Pacific theater was particularly brutal, with the USA and its allies locked in a bitter struggle with the Empire of Japan. The decision that would shape the fate of millions was made behind closed doors, within the hallowed halls of the White House. President Harry S. Truman, a man thrust into the highest office following the death of Franklin D. Roosevelt, was faced with a decision of monumental proportions. The decision to use a weapon of untold destructive power, a nuclear bomb, against Japan. This decision was not taken lightly. Truman and his advisors were faced with a grim reality. The war in the Pacific was unlike any other. It was a grueling, bloody conflict marked by fierce resistance from the Japanese forces. Traditional warfare had cost countless lives and resources, and yet the end seemed nowhere in sight. Truman had to weigh the potential human cost of using such a devastating weapon against the ongoing loss of life that would inevitably continue if the war persisted. It was a balancing act of the most severe kind, a choice between two evils. The president was also acutely aware of the need to assert American dominance in the post-war world. The Soviet Union was rapidly emerging as a global superpower, and the use of the atomic bomb could serve to establish the United States' technological and military superiority. Moreover, Truman was under immense public pressure to bring American soldiers home. The American public was war-weary, and the prospect of a quick end to the war was appealing, despite the catastrophic consequences it would have for the Japanese people. The decision was made. The atomic bombs would be used to bring the war to a swift conclusion. It was a choice born out of desperation, a desire to halt the bloodshed, and a strategic move to consolidate American power in the post-war world order. This decision was not taken lightly, and it was hoped it would end the war swiftly. The stage was set for one of the most devastating events in human history. On August 6th and 9th, 1945, the cities of Hiroshima and Nagasaki were forever marked by the devastating power of nuclear weapons. And so, we find ourselves at the heart of our story. On these fateful days, the United States dropped two atomic bombs, codenamed Little Boy and Fat Man, on the Japanese cities of Hiroshima and Nagasaki respectively. The bombing of Hiroshima was first. The bomb, powered by uranium-235, exploded about 1,900 feet above the city, with a force equivalent to approximately 15,000 tons of TNT. It was as if the sun had burst in the sky, a blinding light followed by a fireball that engulfed the city, incinerating everything and everyone in its path. 3 days later, Fat Man, a plutonium-239 bomb, was dropped on Nagasaki. This bomb was even more powerful, with a force equivalent to 21,000 tons of TNT. The devastation was unimaginable. The city was flattened, and tens of thousands of people were instantly killed. In the wake of the bombings, the effects were immediate and horrific. Survivors, known as hibakusha, were left with severe burns, injuries, and radiation sickness. The cityscapes were unrecognizable, reduced to ruins and ashes. Hospitals, schools, homes, all were obliterated. The human toll was immense, with estimates suggesting that by the end of 1945, the bombings had caused between 129,000 and 226,000 deaths, most of whom were civilians. The bombings also had a profound impact on the world's consciousness. For the first time, humanity had witnessed the destructive potential of nuclear weapons, a power so great that it could obliterate entire cities and end hundreds of thousands of lives in an instant. These bombings were not just another chapter in the annals of warfare. They marked a turning point, a moment when the world was forced to confront the terrifying reality of nuclear warfare. The impact of these bombings was immediate and profound, leading to Japan's surrender and the end of World War II. The bombings of Hiroshima and Nagasaki marked the end of World War II, but they also marked the beginning of a new era. An era that was defined not only by the scars of war, but also by a haunting specter of nuclear power. The immediate aftermath of the bombings was, as one would expect, devastating. The cities were decimated, their landscapes turned into a tableau of destruction. Buildings were reduced to rubble, roads were scorched, and the infrastructure that once supported the bustling life in these cities was virtually non-existent. But it was the human cost of the bombings that was truly heartbreaking. Hundreds of thousands of lives were lost in the blink of an eye. Those who survived were left with physical and emotional wounds that would take decades to heal, if at all. The radiation from the bombs led to health complications, birth defects, and a heightened risk of cancer among the survivors and their descendants. This was a tragedy that had rippling effects, reaching far beyond the immediate victims. Beyond the physical and emotional devastation, the bombings also had profound political and social implications. Japan was forced to surrender, bringing World War II to an end. The world had seen the destructive power of nuclear weapons and was forced to grapple with the implications. This marked the start of the nuclear age, an era characterized by a delicate balance of power and a constant threat of nuclear warfare. The bombings of Hiroshima and Nagasaki also led to a fundamental shift in Japan's national identity. From the ashes of destruction, Japan rose like a phoenix, reconstructing its cities and reinventing its economy. The post-war period saw Japan transform from a militaristic empire to a pacifist nation, committed to peace and disarmament. The bombings remain a controversial topic, with many questioning whether the use of nuclear weapons was justified. Some argue that it was a necessary evil to end the war and save lives. Others contend that it was an act of unnecessary brutality. But one thing is clear: the bombings of Hiroshima and Nagasaki have left an indelible mark on history, a stark reminder of the destructive power of nuclear weapons and the human cost of war. The decision to drop nuclear bombs on Japan was a pivotal moment in history, forever changing the course of global politics. Our journey through this complex and multifaceted topic took us from the tensions of the Second World War to the corridors of power where the decision to deploy nuclear weapons was made. We explored the immediate aftermath of the bombings, the devastation they caused, and the seismic impact they had on the global stage. We began by understanding the context, a world engulfed in the throes of the Second World War, a time of desperation and strategic calculations. The USA, having entered the war late, was determined to bring it to a swift end. The decision to use atomic weapons was not taken lightly, but was seen as a necessary measure to prevent further loss of life. Then we delved into the heart of the matter, the chilling moment when the bombs were dropped. Hiroshima and Nagasaki, two cities that will forever be remembered for the destruction they endured. The immediate effects were catastrophic, but the long-term consequences, both for the survivors and for the world, were equally significant. In the aftermath, we saw a world grappling with the reality of nuclear warfare. The bombings marked the end of the war, but also heralded the dawn of a new era, the nuclear age. The world was forced to reckon with a power so devastating that it could annihilate entire cities in the blink of an eye. But history isn't simply a catalogue of events. It's a rich tapestry woven from countless individual experiences. Behind the facts and figures are real people, whose lives were irrevocably changed by these events. Their stories serve as a poignant reminder of the human cost of war. As we reflect on the past, it's crucial to remember the lessons learned as they shape our understanding of the world today and influence our actions in the future. The bombings of Hiroshima and Nagasaki are a testament to the devastating potential of human ingenuity, a stark warning of the dangers of unchecked power, and a call for peace, compassion, and diplomatic resolution of conflicts.